For those that don't know, my name is Jason Myles. I host a show called This Is Revolution Podcast. Some of you guys, a few people know? Oh, wow. If you guys know the show and you haven't said what's up, that's a dick move, because I don't know who the fuck y'all is. But seriously, I'm very honored to be here. I was honored when my friend Ben Burgis asked me to be a part of this. So I'm pretty stoked for what we're about to do tonight. This is probably going to be a heavy conversation we're going to have. I will try to fit in as many dick jokes as possible, if you're familiar with what I do. That being said, let's bring on this panel. Coming all the way live from Southern California. You may know her as the host of TYT. Her name is Anna Kasparian. And he is the man of the hour. He wrote this book that we're all here to talk about, 4 essays on Palestine. He is my good friend, and I coerced him into moving across the border with me. Woo! Please welcome Ben Burgis. Now, before we get underway with the panel, Ben wants to read a passage from the book to get you guys ready for what we're going to talk about tonight.
The first and most important question, who's going to be on Lucy duty? All right. So, yeah, just want to do the introduction here. This kind of sets it up. The first article I wrote about Israel-Palestine was in 2021 for Jacobin magazine. It's the first of the 4 printed here. Israel doesn't have a right to exist, but Israelis and Palestinians do. But my road to the position articulated there was very long. I should maybe mention here by way of background, it's very off-brand to do the autobiographical thing, because rather than just like, here's the argument, let's just get to it, but I'm going to do it anyway. That my family background is a patchwork of Ukrainian Jews, Croatian Catholics, and hillbilly Protestants, but nobody had really practiced any of it for a couple generations by the time I came along. I spent a couple of years in my late teens and early 20s trying to reconnect with the Jewish side of those roots. I went to religious services ranging from Reform to Chabad. Eventually, I dropped that for the most boring and cliched possible reason, which is that studying academic philosophy turned me back into an atheist. But the rhythms of the thing still speak to me. Even as a 40-something middle-aged atheist Marxist podcaster, I've been known to host the occasional Hanukkah party. What can I say? It's not very atheistic of me, but I like blintzes and potato pancakes. Oh, yeah. And I like candles, and I particularly like it when those candles are in my late grandmother's menorah because I loved her and I miss her. I can also remember having some intensely uncomfortable arguments with her about Palestine. When Israel was bombing Lebanon in 2006, I think it must have been, it was in her here in Southern California, I have a vivid memory of watching the bombs falling on television and thinking, based on the conversation that we were having, that it was like we were watching 2 different channels. She thought Israel was defending itself. That seemed to me like the last thing that was going on. Organized Jewish life in America has for several decades now involved a lot of pro-Israel advocacy. Many young American Jews are systematically challenging that linkage. I can't recommend the documentary Israelism strongly enough to anyone who wants to know what that looks like. Yeah, watch the movie. But as far as I know, no one was wrapping themselves in prayer shawls to do sit-ins at AIPAC during this part of my life. I probably sat in the pews of about 100 synagogues that had Israeli flags somewhere near the Bima. And during those years, I wrestled with this a lot, because on some level I knew that the Zionist project was a square peg to the round hole of my always basically left-wing values. And I tried to make it all work in my head. Rabbi Michael Lerner's Tikkun magazine was a big influence on me. I thought surely Zionism and some sort of baseline progressive values could be reconciled by means of support for a 2-state solution, right? I eventually concluded that Well, wrong. In the first essay, I explain why not. I won't repeat the argument here, but I do want to make 3 supplemental points about my perspective on all this. First, I know that the one-state solution endorsed there can feel hopelessly utopian. I'd add that no government in Israel's history, even the most liberal ones, has ever been willing to offer their population of non-citizen Palestinian Untermenschen anything like a genuine two-state solution where Israel retreated all the way to its pre-1967 borders and let the Palestinians form a real state with a Palestinian army and a Palestinian navy in the remaining 22% of the shared homeland. What the most liberal ones have actually been willing to offer is a demilitarized semi-state pockmarked by annexed settlement blocks and Israeli roads patrolled by Israeli soldiers. If by two-state solution you mean the first thing, not the second thing, then that's almost as utopian. And it seems to me that while we're having utopian conversations, we might as well get clear in our own heads about why one utopia would be a vastly better fit with our values than the other. But look, if some geopolitical earthquake happened that was exactly the right size to force Israel to accept a real two-state solution, but not quite big enough to get them to just become a real democracy by giving citizenship to everyone within their current borders, sure, I would support that. It's far better than nothing. Second, I realize that some of my fellow Marxist types blanch at my use of that word values. It sounds unmaterialist to them. I'd argue that, and I'm going to be annoying again here and draw on that academic philosophy background, that this is just is-ought confusion. As David Hume argued a very long time ago, unassisted is statements about facts can't entail by themselves a damn thing about oughts, conclusions about values. If you want to argue for moral nihilism, be my guest, but Karl Marx's theory of history, which is a set of causal and effect claims about historical facts, isn't going to help you. And if we're going to be real about this, you and I both know that you wouldn't be a socialist in the first place if you were a moral nihilist. You wouldn't bother. Nobody would bother without a pretty powerful baseline commitment to caring about universal human equality. The theory of history can tell us some things about how what we care about can be achieved, by whom and under what circumstances, but it doesn't and can't tell us what to care about in the first place. So I think if we're going to be intellectually honest, we need to admit to having commitments to certain values and to try to do some clear and consistent reasoning about what those values are and what they entail. This is a component of an overall theoretical posture, sometimes called analytical Marxism, which roughly translates to Marxism without all the obfuscatory story bullshit. And finally, the third and last point, things get even clearer when we move from all of this abstract intellectual stuff to pragmatic political contexts. Unfortunately, at least in my society, the United States, the majority of the public, even after the Milosevician horrors that have been unfolding in Gaza since October 7th, still has basically pro-Israel views. And I want to change minds. And you'll find 99.99% of human beings respond a whole lot better to values talk than they respond to being told that the laws of history dictate a certain position, or if they don't just shut up and support oppressed people, they're essentially colonialist oppressors. The third essay in this collection, No One's Rights Should Depend on Where Their Ancestors Lived, ruffled a lot of feathers in that we should just shut up and support oppressed people camp. Even some people who roughly agree with me about these issues told me I shouldn't have written it, or I should have at least toned it down, or because this wasn't a fight worth having. I disagree. I think if we're going to build the kind of Palestine solidarity movement that could actually win, this is a fight we absolutely need to have. Here's the question. If you want to oppose Zionism, in other words, Israeli Jewish ethno-nationalism, should we do that by vicariously adopting Palestinian ethno-nationalism, or by appealing to absolutely universal standards of democracy and human rights? I think the first option is philosophically indefensible in any case. I make that argument in the third and especially the fourth essay, Marx and Rawls versus Nozick and the Land Back Left. I think Arun told me that when he saw the title of that essay, he was like, okay, DSA is definitely not sponsoring this. But as a separate matter, I hope it's obvious to anyone with a half a brain that it's a political non-starter. We live in a country where even if you grew up in rural Alabama and you've never personally met a Jewish person, you could probably think of at least a dozen famous Jews you have basically positive feelings about. There's a good chance your favorite comedian is Jewish, a near certainty that at least a few of your favorite actors are, and probably also a couple of your favorite musicians. And there's basically a 0.00% chance, if you aren't super political, that you can name a Palestinian who the media doesn't tell you is a terrorist. Under these circumstances, demanding that everybody frame their support for Palestinian rights as a matter of rejecting Jewish ethno-nationalism in favor of vicarious Palestinian ethno-nationalism is a recipe for permanent marginality. And about half of my project since I started writing and speaking about politics 6 years ago has been trying to convince the socialist left, such as that sort of exists in this country, to stop choosing virtuous marginality over advancing the kind of arguments that might actually convince normies. The first two essays here are pitched at the convincing normies level. The third and fourth are inside baseball, with the last being conducted at a much more abstract intellectual level. But I hope the perspective that unites all four is obvious and it can be stated in 12 words. Apartheid and ethnic cleansing are bad because universal human rights are good. That's it. And comrades, friends, ladies and gentlemen, let's please focus on that message, because I believe from the bottom of my heart that this is an argument we can win.
All right. Now that we got the preamble out of the way.
See how many seconds it takes for the first dick joke.
Okay, I'm gonna ease into the dick jokes. All right. Wow, it's racist. It's racist, but funny. Anna, you actually have a chapter in this book, and I think one of the reasons why you're here is because of the stance you've taken on the Israel-Palestine debate, if you will, even before October 7th. Would both of you agree to a certain extent that what we've seen over the last year is a bit of a paradigm shift in the way most quote-unquote normies are thinking about Israel-Palestine? And how much do you think images in social media of, sadly, children being killed and cities being leveled have influenced people's opinion on what's happening in the Middle East?
Well, you know, the thing that's been different about this round of the conflict, because as we all know, it's been going on for many decades, is that for the first time, I'm noticing that there's an acceptance of the injustice the Palestinians have been dealing with. And it's, you know, if ever there's anyone who recognizes that, it's usually individuals who identify on the left. But for the first time that I've noticed, you see a component of, you know, the right-wing electorate looking at what's happening, and they see it as an injustice, and they're increasingly speaking out against it. And that, to some extent, gives me hope, because there's very little in this country where you'll see the right and the left agree overtly on things, even though we know that there are issues that they agree on. Usually those issues are not emphasized in the press or anything like that. But what I'm worried about is the very real effort to hide those images and those videos from the public by essentially targeting journalists who are on the ground in Gaza. As we know, 128 journalists have been killed in Gaza, and no international journalists are really allowed into Gaza to do reporting, unless, of course, they're being, you know, chaperoned by Israel as they do their coverage, and you're going to get a very different perspective if that happens. It's been hard covering this and seeing certain people's willingness to really be fully mask off in their lack of concern or their inability to see the humanity of the Palestinians, regardless of how young the children are. As you know, this is a hard conversation to talk about because there was a video that was released recently of Palestinians leaving Jabalia, which was recently bombed again, and it looked like an Armenian death march to Syria. So it's just hard to cover these things, and then on top of that, hear the type of comments from people like Ben Shapiro, for instance, who just recently gave a talk at UCLA and was asked by another Jewish individual, a young man, who said, "Don't you have a problem with the way Israel is, prosecuting this war, the way that they have killed so many innocent civilians?" And Ben Shapiro just said, without any hesitation, "No, I don't have a problem with it. I laud this." He celebrates it, and that ability for humans to dehumanize others like that is shocking to me. Especially when you see the images of the children, especially when you see images of people, parents, by their children's side as they're dying on the hospital bed or have already died on the hospital bed, whatever remains of that hospital, right? They don't want to leave their child's corpse. And you see that, and I mean, how do you see that video or those images and think that they're any different from any of us? Right? And so there's just this lack of humanity in what's going on. And I'm going to be quite frank with you all. I get how our political system works. I get that we live in a two-party system and you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. But it is very difficult for me to stomach the commentary coming from the left, generally speaking, not leftists or, the socialist left. I'm talking about the Democratic Party in regard to what an immoral and horrible person Donald Trump is, while the Biden administration is aiding and abetting what's happening in Gaza right now as we speak. And not only in Gaza, now in Lebanon, also, in Yemen, in pretty soon Iraq. I mean, how many innocent people need to die as a result of the Democratic Party aiding and abetting the slaughter of innocent people before people wake up and realize, no, you guys are also incredibly immoral.
Yeah.
And you really have no leg to stand on this issue. I know I rambled.
Well,
I have a lot of thoughts.
Can we agree? Can we agree to this? We're going to call them the left flank of capital.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll
That's
call them the left
definitely
flank
fine
of
with
capital.
me.
Yeah,
Are we all good with that one? Left flank of capital?
That's fine with me.
And in this case, definitely the left flank of the military-industrial complex specifically.
Definitely.
Which is actually...
Everybody can drop a bomb.
Yeah.
Right?
They say the next one will be dropped by a black woman. It's so amazing.
Gay. Don't you leave that out, you fucking piece of shit misogynist.
Yeah, exactly. It's so exciting, that, as a little girl, she never thought that she was the one who would get to order the shipment of 2,000-pound bombs to drop on refugee camps. It's not what I was going to say, picking up on what Anna had said, but it is it is genuinely amazing, because I've had the thought many times in the last year that's okay, so what I did back in the day in 2019, 2020, for the Michael Brooks show was we would do these debunk segments, where we would watch some clip of a right-winger making some stupid argument and, we'd respond to it. And I've, done a zillion debates with these people, as your Charlie Kirks and
You got flown out to debate Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Good times.
Well, and I made the mistake of buying the ticket. I realized later that they reimbursed me, but I realized later if I just waited, they would have totally
That's
done
that
first
right-wing
class,
money.
Right? It is very true, actually. Before, a few months before I was in New York, it was the first time since I'd started working for Jacobin that I been to the office, and it's one floor of a nondescript building that I think the door, like the actual door leading into it, like the lock was busted. It was like propped open with a broom, and Boss Guard like gotten together like a party because I was there, like welcome me, which is a very nice gesture. But like the total financial outlay for that was like 2 pizzas and a case of beer, and then a few months later I was in Phoenix debating Charlie Kirk. It's like it's the Turning Points USA building, which has its own building with a giant marquee, sliding glass doors. The carpets say Turning Points USA.
Bustling interns.
Yeah, it's like, man, this must be nice to do this when people are like driving dump trucks full of money up to your door all the time. But yeah.
So you don't have handlers at Jacobin, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's actually a real thing. It's not a real thing. It's a delusional, psychotic thing, but that's a real thing somebody said.
Yeah.
That there was a debate I was doing, and somebody was like, "Oh, I wonder if his handlers at Jacobin are like prepping him for this." Like, handlers? Do you mean Megan? Pretty sure she prefers to handle women. I don't know. But in any case, look. So yeah, done all these debates with these people, done all those debunking segments, but it's like I've never viscerally hated them the way I have in the last year. Because like watching people rationalize the death and dismemberment of children, since last October, it was really hard. And to Anna's point, I mean,
I fucking hate Anthony Blinken, like deeply. Okay, like every time the press, every time the press reports on
I'm
that
not gonna stop you while hating
motherfucker,
Anthony
go,
Blinken.
he's going to the Middle East. Oh, he's gonna try to forge a peace. No, he's not. He's not gonna try to forge a peace deal. Okay, that piece of shit is having conversations about how many more bombs U.S. taxpayers can fund in order to carry out the slaughter of innocent civilians in Gaza, Lebanon, all the various sovereign countries, by the way, that Israel is currently bombing. They just bombed a Christian village in Lebanon, allegedly to, assassinate some Hezbollah militant. No evidence of a Hezbollah militant. Every single person that was killed was a civilian in that village. They had no evidence that there was any Hezbollah militant operating out of that village, but it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. No one cares. That's the thing that bothers me the most. The media just reports it and then they move on.
As someone that's closer to mainstream media than Ben and I don't say that in any sort of negative, it's just a literal observation and truth, right? Mm-hmm. We are never going to get out of these t-shirts. We are never going to shave for the camera. we fucking talk about you sometimes and other people that have really good lighting. We're like, God, fucking has good ass
we do
lighting.
have good lighting, I will say that.
Fuck, even when that brought in our house, she got fuck Hannah, man. Good ass lighting ass Hannah. But how do you there is a difference still in mainstream media's coverage.
Still hilarious. I've been in that apartment and it's it's nice, but
not nice that they have that lighting, right? What the fuck does she do with that ring light that I can't?
It's literally $100 ring light.
Yeah. I should flick her. Yeah. But no, seriously, all jokes aside. Mainstream media coverage, which you cover more on your show than Ben and I can. Mm-hmm. I have to limit the amount of horrible shit that he ingests because he debates all these right wingers and it's really bad for his digestion. You have to watch a lot of this stuff too for your job. Mm-hmm. Has the coverage got slightly more nuanced in your opinion?
Slightly. I mean, I'll give credit to people like Jeremy Diamond, of all people, on CNN, because he's, I think when you're actually on the ground, even if you have Israeli handlers trying to, control everything that's going on, I mean, you see bits and pieces of children that have been blown apart by American bombs. And I think that it's had an impact on him because his reporting on the ground has been a lot more critical of how this war has been carried out.
And I was going to say, right, look, while I've already, having already wandered wildly off brand and then all of this, personal, emotional, autobiographical shit, that I will also say, just by coincidence, right, in the time that, the time that the current war, if we're going to even call it that, has been going on, you know, my brother's kid was born just before then, and like I was, I'd moved to LA not long before then, so like I got to, I was like lucky enough. I have a couple of other nephews, but it was like in this case, I was lucky enough to like be able to see him from the get go, and kind of be over there like at least once every couple weeks, so that like in those early months, every time you go over and see him,
It's like smile.
Yeah, it's like he's had a new software update. It's like, oh shit, he's like looking at people and making eye contact and perceiving objects in the external world now. That's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't doing that 6 weeks ago, and it does make it a lot more vivid.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, look, there's just absolutely no goddamn reason whatsoever other than luck, right? That it's those other people's kids, who are dying. Right. I mean, they didn't do anything. There's the, people, the sort of most depraved people in the world to tell you that what they did is they voted for Hamas, which like won a plurality in one election before most of the current population is even alive. Unlike, for example, Joe Biden, who won a majority in an election 4 years ago. And, and look, if we're in the business of saying that people should die or their children should die because, of who they voted for, I mean, it's like, look, unlike, most of the population of Gaza never voted for Hamas, I actually did vote for Joe Biden. So, if we're going to apply that rule consistently, I should be on the target list. But I'm not suggesting that, but like, I will say though, right, to your point, right, that I do feel that difference this time than before. I mean, I'm not going to do jumping jacks about it because I think it's like
long overdue.
Yes, unbelievably long overdue, right? But like, look, this is probably the political subject I've been arguing with people about for the longest. I can remember like the last time, well, not the last time absolutely, but the last time there was like a big flare up in Gaza in 2014, right? That's the
2018, but 2014 is when they leveled it.
Yeah. That was the Protective Edge or Castle Edge.
Yeah.
The Protective Edge, I think. But anyway, that's and I can remember talking to my younger brother who was scheduled to go on a Birthright Israel trip just before that started. And I kind of talked him out of it because, like, I knew that going on a propaganda tour while people were being massacred, was going to be, he's a good enough person that, like, he would have, like, nonstop, extremely fucking unpleasant interactions, that entire time. But, like, I also remember, like, 2014, when they leveled it last time, nobody.
Yeah.
That's like who was protesting that bad? I mean, that was like Anna, Noam Chomsky,
Democracy Now!,
Amy Goodman,
Norm Finkelstein,
me, my little brother Jason, and that's like it, right? Like that's like a total list. I'm exaggerating, but like slightly.
and it killed Norm's career.
Oh yeah,
He we won't get into. He's not here.
But I mean, he's that. That is why I have. Look, I'll admit to being very inconsistent about who will and will not get invites to my show after they've had bad takes about things. But Norm gets the infinite forgiveness for bad takes because the man threw away his academic career to stand up for the Palestinians at a time when nobody was doing that, when that was just a deeply weird thing to do. So it's like, yeah, whatever. I don't care what he's wrong about. He'll come back on to keep talking about whatever he's wrong about until the end of time, after that.
I just can't have him on my show because he keeps insulting my co-host. He called Paul Prescott Talcum X. Remember he came on, he told me, Pascal, you are the learned one.
He had, I'm trying to remember, I wish I could remember our friend Matthew Whalen had like sent him some like, just because I think he thought it was funny to see what Norm thought about it. He sent Norm some like incredibly offensive rap song And his response was, I do love those Negro spirituals.
Remember on my birthday, Norm came on my birthday, and the motherfucker played some Negro spiritual on my birthday. He's like, you have to play this song, The Passion. Norm, I think you racism on me. It's kind of fucked up, Norm. I love Norm Finkelstein. He's a very nice man. He also came on my show and talked about gooning.
About what?
Gooning.
You don't know what gooning is?
No. Do I want
Does
to?
anybody here know what gooning is? Who knows what gooning is? Raise your hand if you're a gooner. We got gooners in the house? You're a gooner? There you go. Raise it with fucking pride. Right, both hands. He's an ambidextrous gooner.
I think pride is overrated. I think sometimes shame would actually be appropriate, but yeah.
Norm came on the show.
We'll tell you after the show.
We're going to tell after the show? Okay. That's fucked up. Okay. But he came on my show and he was like, hey, Norm, how you doing? You just wrote a book. Yeah, but I went and they were talking about gooning. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
Yeah, thanks. But seriously, back to depressing topics.
Yeah.
In the second chapter of the book, you kind of highlight a conversation Anna had in a debate she was having. You were debating Ben Shapiro?
No, she was this. She has debated Ben Shapiro twice, but this was the PBD.
Oh, yes.
PBD stands
Yes.
for?
Patrick Bet David. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was, by the way, the first time I realized, there's some people on the right who know what's going on and they're not happy with it, which made me
But what I wanted to get into is this idea, because one of the things that you do in your book, and I don't know if you want me to say who sent you a very nice review last night. Don't say it.
Sure.
You got a really nice
Email.
email from Slavoj Žižek. And one of the things Slavoj said in a review in the book, and I read it as I was driving down here today. I was blessed to get a ride down here, so I could read it down here today.
Thanks, Laura.
Shout out to Laura for giving me a ride. But Slavoj said, I'm paraphrasing, you make it easy for people to understand the complexities of this conflict. I don't even want to say the word conflict, this genocide, if you will. And I was rereading a lot of essays because you came on my show for a couple of these essays. But the Human Shields one was an interesting chapter because that's the first argument that goes up. And I think a lot of us forget that there's been decades of U.S. propaganda before this even happened, where the human shield defense was used for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And there was even a movie with Samuel L. Jackson, I can't remember the name of the movie, where they were getting court-martialed for killing all these innocent people, and it turns out they weren't innocent. And the innocent woman that he actually shot, when they go back and flash back to the scene, she was hiding the baby, and she throws the fake baby and starts shooting at the soldiers because brown people bad. And you had, I think, the best defense for that. And can you take us through that defense that you had for the human shields thing? The analogy used.
Right. So I personalized it for one of the PBD panelists, I guess, one of the hosts. His name is Adam Sosnick. And he himself is Israeli, so, he felt like his identity was being targeted or questioned. But nonetheless, he used the human shields argument. Well, first he asked me, do you think that this is like the intentional killing of civilians? I said yes. He was shocked that I said yes. And I kept saying yes, because it's pretty obvious. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't think you displace 1.8 million people by accident. Like this, oh no, I just fucked up and I rolled over the wrong way.
Yeah.
And 1.8 million people lost their homes, right? I mean, that's really hard to, 90% of the population of the territory being removed by force from their house. It's, it's always been really hard for me to wrap my head around how anybody can convince themselves that that's accidents happen while you're trying to get at 30,000 Hamas fighters.
There was an op-ed just recently published in the New York Times. Honestly, great for the New York Times. I give them credit for even allowing this to be published. I was shocked, but American doctors who had risked their lives and donated their time in Gaza recently came back and they shared what they had experienced. Tons of kids with gunshot wounds to their heads, as young as 5. So is that an accident? Is that an accident? But anyway, going back to the PBD exchange, you know, he used the whole human shields argument. And I asked him, if someone held your mother hostage at gunpoint and the authorities show up and they just decide, oh, that guy is a threat, we're just gonna kill him and shoot him through your mother, kill the guy who's holding your mother hostage. Because what can we do? She's a human shield, you know? Would that argument work for you? Would you be okay with that? Or would you be furious that the authorities showed up and slaughtered your mother along with the hostage taker? And he was unwilling to answer that question because we all know that he would not be okay with that. That is not a just way to respond to someone who is in danger, it's a bullshit argument. And besides which, I mean, there have been many years and many examples of IDF soldiers using Palestinian civilians, including children, as human shields, even after Israel's Supreme Court ruled that is not to be done, that practice should be banned and it's illegal. They kept doing it anyway. So it's interesting because I feel like with that argument, it's not just an excuse to keep carrying out the atrocities that we see, it's also projection, because it's something that IDF soldiers, and it's well documented, have been doing for many years, using the bodies of literal Palestinian children, through the various battles that have played out throughout this many decades long war. And so I just think that anytime they make those arguments that really just seek to dehumanize or minimize the lives of real people, just turn it around on them and ask them to put themselves in the shoes of Palestinians who are dealing with what they're dealing with right now as we speak. We showed a video on the show today, TYT, of 2 Palestinian girls, both of their parents gone, dead, slaughtered. The oldest sister is like maybe 7 years old. She's carrying her little sister on her back. Journalist is reporting on it, asking her questions. Why are you carrying your sister? She apparently got hit by a car or something, so she's injured. Her sister is not mobile. They don't have parents. Imagine being a 7-year-old. You don't have any parents. No one's there to keep you safe. You're surrounded by rubble. You're hearing bombs. You're just trying to get to a tent for some shelter. I don't even know how these kids do it. And what keeps me up at night is knowing that we are funding the bombs that are terrorizing these people, slaughtering these people, orphaning these children, and somehow speaking out against this makes you the bad guy. For the longest time, made you the bad guy. And so many people, I think, have been afraid to talk about it because, as we know with many other issues in this country, anytime someone wants to silence you, they'll weaponize identity.
Yeah.
So they'll call you an anti-Semite. Go ahead and call me an anti-Semite if I want to specifically speak to the humanity of these innocent people who are getting slaughtered. I know in my heart I'm not an anti-Semite because when I saw what happened to civilians on the Israeli side, I was horrified by that. I spoke out against that because we have to recognize the humanity of everyone. Innocent civilians should be protected always. But why is it that we understand that Hamas committed atrocities against Israeli civilians on October 7th, but we are unwilling as a country overall to accept the atrocities that are being committed against Palestinian civilians right now as we speak?
Yeah, can confirm. Anna, not an anti-Semite. It's Jason borderline, you know.
Maybe.
Is the
Maybe.
I mean, he's
Black.
I
try to use it sometimes, but I'm pretty ruthless.
You know, he's made a few. There have been a few borderline jokes about me being neurotic about airplanes and stuff, but that's But on the other hand,
But I did scream on that flight.
you did. But he ate the bagels that I made, so
I did.
it's
I did.
That's
Look. This. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go, right there, ebony and ivory.
there
Did it?
you
We
go.
fixed it. Take that, Michael Rappaport. You're here somewhere, aren't
Yeah.
you? Lurking.
But I mean, I will say, right, like, I mean, this is kind of, I actually remember our late friend Michael Brooks telling me once that he thought that, like, a lot of what sort of immunized him against the kind of like identitarian deference that, you know, that you should, like, people say, oh, you should just like turn off your brain and listen to this person or that person because their identity category was, you know, growing up and, you know, and around all this shit and realizing that it was very wrong, right? And realizing that's like, okay, well, look, if this doesn't apply here, oh, you have to agree with me about this or you're an anti-Semite, right? Shouldn't apply anywhere, right? You know, you should just, like, you're just allowed to think everything through and, you know, come to the conclusions you're going to come to. And, like, you know, there's not, you know, I think that it's, well, okay. I know Ed's filming this. Well, if we put this on the channel, I might think about whether to edit this part out. But
Oh, shit.
But several months ago, I was visiting our friend Matt McManus in Michigan, and he teaches at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I was at his office while he was doing office hours. And there's this kid who came in, and he was like complaining that McManus had, like, I thought assigned or maybe just referred to something about Judith Butler in class, and that he said that you know, which a lot of good reasons to object to that, but he said, oh, Judith Butler's commentary about Israel-Palestine this is burned into my head when he said this, because, like, it took everything in me not to, like, start yelling at this kid who's, like, you know, be the most inappropriate thing in the world. He's in, like, my friend's office hours, but they, you know, said it's raised the emotional and psychological cost of being Jewish on campus.
Oh, word?
It's like, all right, okay, yeah.
What did McManus say when the kid said that?
I mean, he just kind of pretended he hadn't said it. I mean, he was like, you know, he was like, oh, well, if you want to criticize Judith Butler, here's a reading list, you know. But
it's a McManus ass.
It's a very McManus ass answer. But, like, look, like, you know, we should be able to look into that mirror and say, yeah, what's wrong with that is also wrong with appeals to identitarianism in any other context, right? Because, you know, like, the idea that there's, like, a Jewish hive mind that all has one position on Israel-Palestine, and if you disagree with it, you're an anti-Semite. If you can see what's wrong with that, you should see what's wrong with thinking that there's a black hive mind or, you know, whatever, like all the other alleged, you know, thank you, Waz, all the other alleged hive minds, right? That's like what? Like, you know, you think Jews or black people or women or any other category aren't just like people who disagree with each other about politics like everybody else does? Like that there's no class divisions, there's no ideological divisions.
You can't have class divisions when you control all the world's money.
Oh, God.
Okay, I'm going to revisit the earlier evaluation.
Poor Anna's like, I'm so glad I didn't advertise this on T1T.
We actually did today.
Oh, no shit? Okay. Anything I say has nothing to do with anyone at TYT.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, like, it's obviously a particularly grotesque thing because you have what's wrong with normal liberal or rad lib identity politics sort of married to, you know, defending ethnic cleansing, right? Which is, you know, I mean, usually this stuff is just annoying and, like, unhelpful, right? Like, this is sort of an extremely evil version. But, like, you know, I think there is something to be said here that's, like, maybe a larger point about how to respond to it. That, you know, like, I think that, you know, this maybe goes back to, like, the point at the end of the introduction about, you know, how to make these arguments, right? If you're trying to convince normal people that, you know, you can't just assume that everybody kind of comes into it with your perspective on, you know, Middle Eastern geopolitics and your sort of moral way of viewing the world, about oppression and all of that stuff. I think that that's a really helpful context to force yourself to think in, right? It's like I did back in the spring, I gave like a talk at the Palestine encampment at Princeton, and in the which was, by the way, it was very funny to me because I've been reliably informed throughout corporate media that these people are like horrible, violent anti-Semites, and at Princeton, yeah. Just crawling with them, right? So I'm lucky I got out of there alive. But anyway, yeah, it was very polite, thoughtful bunch of college students, and like a third of them were Jewish, right? So whatever. But like one of them asked about about this question, right? And what I told them then, which I stand by, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear this right now, is like, but it's like, look, whatever you say in your like advocacy on behalf of the Palestinians, just kind of run it through a filter of like, imagine the least progressive member of your extended family listening to you while you were saying this. And would this make them more likely or less likely to think you had a point?
Yeah. That's a really good point. Sorry, I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit more, because the other issue that I've noticed, and I'm very curious what you all think about it, is it does bother me what happened to Israeli civilians on October 7th.
Yeah,
they were atrocities. I'm very knowledgeable about this ongoing war and conflict. I understand the notion of wanting to fight back. I do not agree with what Hamas did, and I don't think that this is an example of like freedom fighters, considering the fact that what they did gave the Israeli government the excuse to carry out the atrocities that they're carrying out right now. Mm-hmm. How did this in any way benefit the Palestinian people? But I do find myself kind of frustrated with some of the commentary narratives of certain people. I'm not going to name any names, but they almost justify it. They do justify it, and then refer to like literal children on the Israeli side as like colonizers, and it's like they're fucking kids. Like, no, they didn't make any decisions on any of this.
Well, sorry, if I could just real quick jump in on that. Sure. I wanted to say, first of all, right, you mentioned earlier, right, like, when you were introducing everybody, you said Anna was on, the panel because of, her advocacy on this issue and all that stuff. And that is definitely true. But like also part of the reason Anna's on this panel is that, I think she's one of the very most honest and thoughtful people that I know who works in media. And I think that, agree or disagree on any specific point, I think one of the people who's least likely to not say things she thinks are true.
True.
Because of like how she thinks the audience is going to react to it, right? So that's why she's here, right?
Half my audience hates me, which is okay. I accept it.
It's a sign you're doing something right. That's
fucked up.
Yeah. If 38,000, I don't know, what's the, how many?
I'd kill for some of those views. I'm not going to lie.
And if you had that many, a certain percentage of them would hate you. But
oh, dude, yeah. We've both been guests on that show. Fucked around and read the comments. One of the greatest comments I ever read was being a guest on TYT.
Okay, but no.
Yeah, what was it?
It was Anna Kasparian's view of the world is a leftist paradise where sexless automatons are fed their government gruel. Me and Bert Cooper were in a Denny's by the Burbank airport. And I said, Bert, I was on this show and you have to read the comments because these are the most unhinged things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I dig this.
Although, you know what? I'm just going to take the high road here and not say anything about what people were saying when Jason was on the Majority Report. So,
oh, wow, yeah.
I saw that.
But, I'm still traumatized by that one.
Yeah, I think there were some accusations of class reductionism and other things.
Oh,
that,
Jesus Christ.
you know,
Yeah, there's that.
I'm giving the sanitized version, but anyway.
He hates black people. Yes, and? Right?
So, but like, yeah, right. I mean, look, obviously what you said is correct. I think that it's ridiculous that this was ever a point of contention. And it does connect up very much, I think, to the point about convincing normies, because look, sometimes something is so correct in principle that, you know, you should just, everybody's going to hate you for saying it, but you should just say it, and that's just the deal, right? But like, a lot of times, there are these cases where the most self-marginalizing things the left does are both wrong in principle and are like guaranteed to
Counterproductive?
be counterproductive, like
Yeah.
crazily counterproductive.
Yes.
Like,
Give me an example.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
I call bullshit. Give me an example.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a, here's the example that's been burned into my head for the last 2 years is a few weeks before the LA live show that we did.
Oh, Jesus.
The New Republic published an article by Jacob Silverman that was about a totally unrelated topic, right? But it was just one of these things where the writer wants to get in, oh yeah, by the way, fuck this person and that person and that person,
Totally.
right? You know, in the opening paragraphs. And he mentioned me and Anna
And Nando?
and our friend Nando, who's saving his career but not being here tonight. I kid. I love Nando, but
Lurking in the shadows.
yeah, but and described us as people who might have once described themselves as leftists, but now can't stand the sight of homeless encampments.
Right.
I just remember thinking, it's like, man, is the correct progressive position that I'm supposed to look at people sleeping in the park?
Yeah, I actually can't stand homeless encampments.
and-
They should be
and-
not in homeless encampments. They should be
and, like,
in a better place.
Swell up with pride that as
Yeah.
a society we did such a good job of taking care of these people. Like, that, okay. That's weird. I don't understand that, right? Like, that people who give themselves these weird progressive points for like,
For libertarianism?
for libertarianism, for being
Yeah.
okay with like these kind of dystopian conditions that, you let people like, oh, well, we're not like giving them permanent supportive housing or, healthcare or addiction counseling or psychiatric services, but we'll let them sleep in the park, right? That's
Duh, Ben. It's all about neoliberal realism, and the NGO will provide. So why are you hating?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, look, when I'm on the subway, I don't prioritize my bourgeois comfort. That's all I'm saying.
Oh,
But,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm not saying anything.
So that would be one example. Another one would be this, right? All the fucking people who, on like October 8th, we're like, well, actually, if you read Frantz Fanon and,
Jesus Christ.
that it actually works out to be like a really good thing and very revolutionary.
Tell me that you've never read Frantz Fanon with your Frantz Fanon quote.
Yeah, but my Goodreads quote from Frantz Fanon tells me that it's actually great.
From Wretched of the Black Skin.
Exactly. Wretched of the black skin, awesome of the white faces. I don't know, something like that.
He wrote something, Kill Whitey. That's all I know is Kill Whitey, Kill Whitey. Ah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm pretty sure the ghost of Frantz Fanon thinks that it's actually awesome when you just like kill random grandmas at the bus stop. And it's like, okay, one, it's just very wrong in principle. If we really have to argue about that, I just, we'll refund the ticket. I just don't have the energy tonight, But two, it's so obviously strategically counterproductive.
100%.
It drives me insane.
100%.
It's like, yes. So on the afternoon of October 8th, 2023, I'm going to start making all these terribly sophisticated arguments that maybe it's not always wrong to kill civilians. Gosh, I'm not going to need this principle that it's wrong to kill civilians in a big way in about 2 hours, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day for the next year, right? Like, this is just before anybody with half a brain knew that Israel was about to go on a rampage of killing civilians throughout Gaza, increasingly the West Bank, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran tomorrow, right? You know, that it's like, yeah, maybe, like, if you're actually thinking about how you're going to convince people, and if that's not the plan, I want to hear the plan, right? If the plan doesn't involve convincing all of the normies to be against this, then I really want to know, right? I mean, it's like, are you going to do armed struggle? You know, that's, Becky, I want to see it, right? You know, that's I've been to DSA meetings. I don't think anybody there is doing armed struggle, right? That's so.
That's the part you don't go to, is the arms training. They never invite you to arms training.
Yeah. I just can't visualize it. That's all I'm saying, right? So I don't think you're going to do armed struggle. I think that you're going to have to convince a Democratic majority of the population to care about this issue in a way that the hard, cold reality is right now most Americans do not care about it. And I think if you're going to do that, you can't expect everybody to buy into your whole view of geopolitics for the last 75 years as like a price of admission. You have to have an argument that's going to mean something to somebody who's basically never paid attention to this issue before.
Yeah.
And I think universal human rights, it's always wrong to kill civilians.
Yes.
That's got to be it, right? Because if it's not it, I don't know what it is.
But also, don't play into, like, the fear that the Israeli side has with all of this, right? Because what do they keep repeating over and over again? They want to destroy us. They don't believe that we have a right to exist. And then you have, these various figures talking about how it's okay to slaughter Israeli civilians. It's not okay. And you're playing into their fears and their paranoia about what could happen if we actually change things and allow for Palestinians to live in peace with Israelis.
Well,
yeah, I mean, look,
okay,
so just one last thing about this. I'm so sorry, man. Look, especially if you have the kind of radical utopian ideas about what like an ideal solution would be like that I talked about in the introduction. Like, look, there's a reason that like the ANC and the South African Communist Party and COSATU, the Trade Union Federation of South Africa, didn't go around just like shooting or blowing up random white South Africans for being white South Africans, because they knew that was not like
Counterproductive.
It's not a strategically productive thing to do, all morality aside, right? Like, if you want to build like a future situation of equality with these people obviously going to be part of, right? That you can't do stuff like that. And I just think a lot of this is people have trouble holding two thoughts in their head at the same time, right? That they, there's more than one thing could be bad. Like many times 3 or 4 things are simultaneously bad. That's
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, and yeah, if like at some point in the history of the struggle against apartheid, the ANC had been defeated or co-opted, and some hideously reactionary group of like black nationalist, Christian fundamentalists was like the primary force fighting the South African government, that would be a moral and political tragedy. I wouldn't feel any need to apologize for those people, but also I wouldn't support apartheid, right? Like that just, sort of seems like a non sequitur.
I did want to ask about, certain attacks in the media, and one of the attacks that's affected me for no good reason. There's a figure that I am not a fan of whatsoever, a guy named Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yep.
Not a fan. Maybe some of you guys are. I don't give a shit. That's cool.
I am now.
Really?
I
I'm
yes,
still not a fan.
Agreed. Because he I don't know if you.
But let me
Yeah,
say
go
this.
ahead, go ahead.
So Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is kind of like king liberal, right? He's like, look, we got a black guy on our side, and he writes the flowery language. It's so pretty.
Yeah, what did Kuba say last night? He's the Democratic Party's black friend.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. But Ta-Nehisi comes to the house for the holidays, and we like him.
And then he shows up on CBS Mornings and
He showed up on CBS Mornings, and all these people were sharing this clip, and I hadn't watched it, and I watched it with my show, a panel of colored folks, and I was shocked that they attacked him of all people, because he doesn't really go against the party line. Even with the case for reparations, doesn't really go against the party line, right? He always asks for the hearts and minds of white people. Like, I just, please. Right? I don't give a shit. But anyway, the way they attacked him, I read this, and it felt like it was in the backpack of some sort of blue-haired extremist terrorist. And I was like, Ta-Nehisi Coates, word? That's what you read. We read different books, but still, it was that attack. And and I say this with all due respect, you are a media professional. If you go on my show, we're gonna fuck with you right before you go on to get you ready that we're gonna fuck with you for the majority of the hour. We send you a warning on the email. It's a light show. You go on Anna's show, there's 15 people that come on a screen and say, okay, we need you to stand on your camera like this. Are you ready? Okay, we're gonna give you be ready? Are you ready? Can you say this louder? Can you fix this? When you go on real media, it's very different. You are prepared. You usually talk to a PR person when you have someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates level. So he knows what he's gonna talk about beforehand. So you could tell that he was not ready for what happened, right? And I think he handled it as much
really
as much as I don't like him. I have to admit, he did a very good job. I didn't like the whole, I'm a child of Jim Crow. Not really. But still.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with Anna. I liked I actually like, after the first couple questions, right? Like he said, I didn't watch this, but our producer Jake watched some other thing that Coates had done in Democracy Now! Or something, and he said that Coates said for the first couple questions he didn't quite realize he was in a fight yet, right? Like he just kind of handled them like a normal interview, and then he was like, oh, wait a second, this is really like a hit job. But once he realized it, I thought he did great. And like the thing that I thought was specifically great is that he didn't do like, he didn't call anybody a colonialist. No. He didn't, there was no like privilege checking, appeal to anything like that. All he did is like, look, here's a general principle. It's wrong to deny people rights because of their ethnicity. Why don't you think this general principle applies here? Which I think is exactly the way to do it.
In fact, I don't think this happened, but it was almost as if right before the interview, he watched that viral clip of Michael Brooks talking about the issue. Because when he finally got into his stride, as he was being challenged by, I think his name is Dokupil or whatever.
Donkey pill.
Yeah.
Don't take those.
Once he finally
like gas
hit
station dick
stride,
pills.
Man's lived in Mexico for 2 years. He knows.
it reminded me of that talk that Michael did.
At that college?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Lafayette College, yeah?
Yes, Lafayette College. And he was challenged on his views in regard to Israel and all that. And he's like, it's not complicated. It's very simple. And that's like exactly what, Coates said.
Yeah, totally.
And it was concise. It was clear. It really hit to the point of, these are human beings who are treated as subpar, who aren't given the same rights, and have been dealing with horrible conditions. I mean, think about these kids who were born in horrible conditions and have died in those conditions. They've known nothing else. And that's immoral. It's wrong. And he was able to concisely help people understand the injustice as he was being challenged by someone who's so one-sided about all of it. And look, by the way, I have no problem with a journalist or media figure asking difficult questions. The only part of that exchange that bothered me is that the host started it off by accusing him of being an extremist when his views are not extreme at all.
Yeah,
He
well,
just, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, what he said in the knapsack of an extremist, right? Like that made it like what he was suggesting is that like the terrorists would like it, right? Like
He
that's
called him a terrorist. Like that's essentially what happened in that exchange in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd be able to compose myself and be able to answer as calmly as he did, but he did a really good job.
He did it for he did a great job.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been on a show and someone said something to me that I didn't like, and it didn't go well for me. At all. I went on Feldman's show once, and he said some shit I didn't dig, and I was like, oh, you can fuck right off. You can totally fuck right off.
Yeah.
But besides that,
I've seen Ada argue with Alan Dershowitz without telling him to fuck off once. So I mean, that's like a gold.
Well,
medal.
she's a professional.
but-
She's a professional.
Yeah. Well, you insinuated. You were like, oh yeah, we all know how much you care about children.
By the way,
But she
inside
kept it to the
baseball,
implication.
he tried to sue us over that. And we're like,
Word, did he really?
yeah, he demanded an apology and retraction. We told
Did he
him-
really?
He did. We said no because Discovery would be real fun.
Oh
So
my
you
God.
want to sue us?
So you told him to fuck right off.
Go ahead and do that.
fuck right off.
Looking forward, yeah. He dropped it right away.
Of course
Yeah.
he did.
So, but how did you feel? Because I know when I saw Coates get attacked, for me it was like, you're attacking your golden boy. This is your boy. How did you feel as a media professional when you saw CBS Morning Show? It gets that was a last minute hit job because the co-hosts were quiet and looked shocked as well. It even felt like the camera didn't know where to go. Like you could tell it was one of those like, oh, this dude's totally going off script. But that being said, how did you feel when you saw that hit job on Ta-Nehisi Coates as far as how far the mainstream media is willing to go at this point?
You know, surprisingly, I think that he did such a great job in communicating the message
Yeah.
that I was happy with it. Because I'm like, the person who looks bad here is the individual who just called him an extremist for understanding that there's a gross injustice that, you know, Palestinians have been dealing with for many decades now. And the host is the one who looked incredibly ignorant. And that's clear, especially considering all of the stories that broke after that whole exchange. I was just honestly so relieved to see someone concisely and clearly deliver the message that Coates delivered in that segment. And he did it without losing his nerve. He did it without losing his temper.
Yeah.
And so, I again, overall, I was pleased with it. And I was also really pleased that, like, Barry Weiss was really offended that there was, like, an internal review and they found that it didn't meet editorial standards. She's like, meh. Like, go ahead and cry about it. It was great.
Yeah, I really love that woman founded a newspaper called the Free Press. And she was like, all right, we have had it up to here with the wokeness and the censoriousness. And, you know, we just believe in free and open debate about everything and, you know, classical liberalism. We're going to found this thing because we have these values. And then like 90% of what they do is like call people anti-Semites for like opposing bombing children. It's like, okay, I think there's some mission creep here. I don't quite know what happened. But I will also note that at the Free Press thing here in LA that I went to with Anna and Waz and the debate they had. And, you know, Anna went home right after because she's a nerd, you know. I
love to be home.
Yeah. But Waz and I went to the after party, and somebody tried to introduce me to Barry Weiss. And,
Why didn't you fucking talk to her?
Oh, I was like, oh, sure, I'll do it.
You were ready. You was ready.
I was ready.
To intellectually throw down.
I was ready to do it, and
Hanging out with the red skin chicks. Don't listen to
Oh, the truth comes out, Burgis.
different part of the night. Anyway, that's.
Oh, was that the night you were telling me about like a little bit ago?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, moving right on from that. That's the. But this person was like, "Oh yeah, I'll introduce you to Barry Weiss," and she was like standing there talking to some people, and she saw me walking up, and she just did this like beeline in the other direction.
Really?
Wow.
And I don't know. I mean, she
She didn't want to have a Jew off? No?
you know, I mean, I assume she knows. I mean, she follows me on Twitter, so like, I don't think it was like a coincidence. Anyway, so very curious about what happened there. But yeah,
This is why I can't come to those parties. I totally would have instigated that. Where you going, Barry? Don't be a little punk. It's just been Burgis. Ain't y'all all the same? No? No? Sorry ass.
yeah. All right, let's send me this 5 video files so we can like edit the shit out of it before it goes up. But that's
Don't edit a goddamn thing.
we probably won't actually. But
That's the sad part. I just got a video taken down.
for what?
I called it the Professional Gooning League because we did an impersonation of if there was a professional gooning league and what it would sound like if we were the play-by-play guys for the
Is
Uh,
professional.
gooning what like Dershowitz is into?
I was already.
Perfect. I know what it is now.
I was already. Anyway, I was all ready to be like mad on Jason's behalf about the censorship. It's like okay.
I was hurt. I got an email and everything. I was like, oh, that's the one you took down? Oh, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you guys as time is coming to a close.
We got actually the first time I ever got a video removed by YouTube before I had my own show. I think I'd already been doing the debunks and TMBS, but I was still doing the weekly videos for Zero Books.
They removed one of those?
They
How could
removed
they
one of
hear with
those.
that audio? It was like,
Once you get the false fallacy, I know there's been a lot of complaints about the audio.
Is that a recording of me? It was the funniest thing because it was the most innocuous video that I probably ever did for them. It was, in fact, a former student of mine at Rutgers asked if I would do it. He was like, there was this Ben Shapiro video that was like, you know, the premise of the video was that he was going to explain why, and you know, just this is his premise, right? American Jews vote for Democrats, even though Democrats are horrendously anti-Israel, right? That's the
wow.
that's the premise, right? And so the video was called "Why Ben Shapiro Was Wrong About Israel and American Jews." And it was just the most boring, straightforward, like lame, like, you know, point by point, here's what he said, here's why I think he's wrong, kind of like debunking video ever. And it was, for a long time, it was still up, but you had to, it was flagged as possible hate speech, and you had to click through this screen that was like, I understand this may be hate speech, before you could watch it.
Did it make you take, it asked me if I wanted to take a class on hate speech. I was like, yes, I do.
Yeah. And then
I did a video on gooning.
And then they just took it down entirely. And yeah, it was the weirdest goddamn thing. But yeah, that was the first, and you know, it's like a small sign, but like this really is, you know, this really is, like, I think this is important to say, this really is probably, like, outside of, like, truly fringe stuff, right? Like, I'm sure you get, like, censored more if you're doing videos about why, I don't know.
Gooning,
right? Or, you know, Hitler was great, or, you know, pedophilia
You can do
fine,
Hitler was great. You can totally do Hitler was great.
but-
You can do Hitler was great. The Klan is awesome. I so many videos I say about dicks and how to get your dick bigger. What about like
There is a lot
nuts?
of
If your
that,
nuts get tied
actually,
in a knot, all kind of weird shit. I'm joking with a friend about gooning.
But outside of that stuff, like outside of truly fringe things, like this is the most, like what we're talking about right now. Like Palestinians are people, they should have the same rights as everybody else, is it really is the most censored major position in American life, right?
Totally. Yeah. Like our videos tend to get demonetized and we go out of our way to make sure we don't show anything too gory or gory at all. Like we, we'll blur images and stuff. And it feels like these platforms like disincentivize that kind of content, right? Regardless of how sanitized the imagery is.
Well,
and it's, we don't care. We do the stories anyway, and sometimes it'll take up literally half of the show, knowing that it's going to be demonetized. But if people aren't willing to talk about it, even if it comes at some cost to themselves or a company that they work for, like, what's the point of what they're doing overall? Like, what is the point, right? Like, I do a YouTube show. Like,
yeah. And like, again, Norm Finkelstein lost his tenure, and that was after 2014. There was, if anybody remembers, Steven Saletta. That was a guy who was, he was hired for a tenure-track position at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, and he, like, as a Palestinian American, he tweeted some angry things about Operation Cast Lead, and and he was essentially fired from a tenure-track job. I mean, the excuse was that it's like, technically speaking, he'd only been offered the job and accepted it and moved to Illinois, but he hadn't, like, I don't know, maybe they hadn't given him his library card or something, so it wasn't being fired, right? I think the majority of states at this point have laws against boycott.
Unconstitutional laws.
BDS, boycott, divestment, sanction, right? There's one country in the world you're not allowed to boycott, advocate boycott and have state contracts, blatantly unconstitutional. There are all kinds of universities that have
loyalty oaths.
Oh my God, yeah, you have to promise you're not going to boycott Israel to have jobs in state government, have state contracts. You've got all kinds of universities that over the summer they spent the summer rewriting the rules for protest and free speech on campus. So like now you're allowed to protest them, but only if they give you permission in advance, and you don't use amplified sound, right? Which,
Jesus.
Protest should be convenient for everybody.
Yeah,
that's how they're effective.
It's the whole point.
But
right?
do you think
that's what
before
Martin Luther King said?
that's totally what he said.
Yeah, but I just want to say, right? Like, this is like we had, just to maybe circle and underline the point, like this year we've had congressional hearings where people like university presidents have gotten fired because they were hauled in front of these McCarthyite kind of congressional hearings about why they weren't cracking down enough on people who were protesting against genocide. And we the House of Representatives voted on a resolution that said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which all I can think is, man, it's such a good thing. It's such a good thing that my grandmother isn't alive to see me officially, legally be an anti-Semite, but it's just it is insane. And I have just never in my life, and I know I'm ranting, I'm sorry, but I've never in my life felt as strong a disconnect between observable reality and what I see in the media as I felt in the last year. That, they not just what's true about the kind of Chomsky, Herman manufacturing consent model, but a caricature of that, what a 19-year-old who just read Chomsky for the first time thinks the media works like.
Totally.
That's never felt closer to reality than it does right now.
I do want to ask you one last question. Time is coming to an end, and it's the third chapter of your book that you came on my show to talk about.
Some of your audience will never forgive you.
Fuck them. Right? Do they really love me? That's what I always say. There's people here that say they know me. They didn't say what's up. That's fucked up. It's not like I'm not approachable. I don't have sunglasses on here. Like, do you know who I am? Yeah, we know who you are. And fuck you. Right? But anyway.
Apartment smells of leather-bound books. You know.
My apartment smells fucking awesome. And you tell all these people that it smells wonderful in there. Doesn't smell like farts in a single guy. I have more than just condiments in my refrigerator, goddammit. Come to my house, it's luxury. It's like Quagmire's house. It is. But seriously, you came on my show and you had wrote this article, and sometimes you write these articles and I just go, let's fill a day with Ben. Wow. I'm being a dick. But no, you wrote this article and it was near and dear to my heart. It was about land back.
Yeah.
And Palestine and nationalism. And we come on each other's shows so much and we never know what's going to get people riled up. And I can say this honestly, I don't know what anybody likes. And I used to care about what people liked. And then I was like, I don't give a shit because as you said, I get to work on the internet and do what I want to do. If I want to talk to Ben about horror movies, I'm going to talk to Ben about horror movies. If I'm going to talk about fucking what it would be like to do play-by-play on a porn set with my friend, I'm going to do that because I can. So Ben wrote this thing that I found interesting. I also get to talk to like really interesting people. And I happen to live next to a really interesting guy. And we do spend our time having deep conversations that are really fucking boring. And one of them that we both get a little animated about is the land back thing. I won't get into why I get animated about it. But Ben wrote this piece, and I didn't know because I don't do social media well because I don't like when people say mean shit because I don't dig it.
Yeah, stay away from social media.
Yeah, like I fucked up. I'm a rant. Fucking Ben got to rant. Fuck him. And when we were doing this LA show. I came home, I got hit by a big rig in Ensenada, right? And so I didn't know how to get home, and it took me like hella hours to get home, and I finally got home. I didn't have my car because I got hit. The big rig fucked me. He was drunk. It was horrible. But anyway, I'm here. I'm fine. It's fine. My car is back. It's fine. It's fine. Fuck you. I got tons of stories about you hanging out in Mexico. But anyway... I get home and I had this iPad at the time, and my iPad had social media on it. And I came home and was like, ding, 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 ding. And it said you have like hundreds of notifications. I was like, oh, what did I do? What did I say that people cared about? I didn't say shit. It was the fact that, you were on the show and some people had said some mean things, but I thought it was to me. And then I responded to those people. And Ben said that was one of the meanest things I've ever said. We shouldn't say it on the show.
Was it the thing about the
how racist his mom was?
That the person you were arguing with, that you said that the basic, like, I'm not going to do justice to the eloquence of this, right? But there was this whole scenario about what this person's mom would or would not do for nickels, and to whom. This is the flip side of the social media thing, right? Like I can spend way more time than I should in, like, I don't know, I saw it day before yesterday. Brianna Wu told me that I'd made a blood pact with Islamists.
That was awesome. Didn't you debate Brianna Wu?
I did, yeah.
And did you piss her off?
I guess.
And when you made the blood pact, what did it look like? Were goats involved?
Yeah, it's I don't think you should drop 2,000-pound bombs in refugee camps. I've essentially made a blood pact with Islamists. She's a very thoughtful person anyway, but I can have that, and since some part of my brain is broken from doing this for too many years,
yep,
I'll just be like, oh, That's interesting, Brianna. Can you tell me more about why you think that? Because I don't understand your perspective on this. Whereas I think you would go straight to the mom and the nickels, and
I won't repeat it because you're recording, but it was bad.
So
Toussaint told me I can't respond to anybody anymore. On this one, I stopped because that was bad.
yeah, right. Like, but I mean, clearly, I actually think it would be healthier to spend so little time doing this that like. You had that level of reaction when somebody said something that fucked up, right?
There people would say like the meanest shit, and they were talking about my mom. I was like, dude, what do you know about my mom? She's a whore too. What are you gonna do about it? My mom may suck, but she'll never suck as much cock as your mom.
Oh my God.
Like my mom's top tier whore, but your mom.
Oh my God.
Her jaws are just like a snake.
All right.
But anyway.
We're gonna try to put some part of this on YouTube later.
It's just a but seriously, so you came on the show and I didn't know that you were fighting with people left and right, and then there's a screen and we can see the comments from all the different social media sites that are up, and I think we might even have cross-streamed with our different channels, so it's moving at this rapid pace. I'm trying to pay attention to Ben. I'm trying to look at all the motherfuckers we're getting called by doing the show. And it was the show that you did about literally chapter 3, which I thought was a very important essay in the book. And probably, in my opinion, the most controversial part in the book, because there is a almost moralizing for this idea of blood and soil ethno-nationalism that goes into the justification for believing that Palestinians should be treated with humanity. And you wrote this essay on why you thought that perspective has some flaws, to say the least. See, the dog is mad.
Yeah, good dog. I mean, I think this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I've got to say, I was actually shocked when Jacobin went for it, because over the years of writing for them, I've developed a pretty good sense of what pitches they will and will not take. And
Slow news week?
I didn't think they would do this, but then they did. So I was like, all right, great, right? Because
How was the reaction? So you do get emails when you write this stuff.
Oh yeah. I get people. I have gotten many emails.
Talking to the microphone.
Sorry. Yeah. I used to it used to be that I'd get an email once every 3 months from somebody who, if for some reason these people all email me at the Rutgers address. I think that they think that's going to get me in trouble or something. I don't know, but but
like Henry Hill's wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Rutgers!
There is an anti-Semite living in this building. Exactly, yeah. It used to be, it was look, I get an email once every 3 months, and 2/3 of the time, it was a libertarian who wanted to rant about communism, and a third of the time somebody wanted to fight with me about force the vote, since that's never going to die. But yeah, if you don't know what that is, congratulations on living your life.
Don't say it 3 times. It's like Candyman.
Exactly. But for the last year, it happens a lot more, and it's always Israel, right? It's always that, people want to tell me that I'm an anti-Semite and I love the terrorists, and, I love Hamas, and, I hate Jews, and, I've a...
Did you know how Hamas treats gay people?
Yeah.
That must mean,
That's what someone sent you a message and said that?
No, that's the most ridiculous argument
people
ever.
do say that all the time.
Oh,
though.
but don't you know what the Palestinians think about gay people? Oh, okay, great. Then we should execute them
like all of the Palestinians?
Then we should just kill them, right? That's
it's
that's we should also just carpet bomb Alabama, I guess, right?
Damn.
I have a while we're just doing mass murder because people don't adopt social liberalism. Yeah, no, they don't do that, right? I'm sure that there are people who get that one all the time. What I get all the time is that I'm like, a evil radical professor telling, propagandizing people and indoctrinating them to hate Israel. And whatever it is, what it is. But
We should do a thing where we read all the crazy emails that you get.
that
would be pretty fun.
That would actually be kind of fun. But that's
because I want to see your indoctrination to the hatred of Israel.
Yeah, which is like I've never once brought up in a class. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's not even what you teach.
It's like yes, what we're gonna do like truth tables on Monday and Descartes and Hume on Wednesday, and then on Friday we'll do jihad. And I don't, it really wouldn't fit naturally into the syllabus. Like I don't know how I would do that.
It's like a Friday jihad pizza party.
If I wanted to, right? But yeah, right. So people do that, right? And usually, when I get hate mail about Israel stuff, I mean, I did like a few articles about it for Jacobin before October 7th and like dozens since then for obvious reasons. And 99% of the time it's that. But yeah, after this article, I would actually get hate mail from people who broadly agreed with me about all that. And now they were mad that I was like a colonizer. And
I think this comes back to your broader point that you were making about the problem that we have sometimes in our little left world, where there's kind of almost a holy trinity of speak, the white supremacist, the colonizer, and who else? The patriarchy?
Yeah, I don't know. I think people used to care more about patriarchy than they do now, but, just honest impression. But
spoken like a true patriarchal.
Yeah, I've gotten much less shit about my misogyny lately. I don't know. But no, I'm kidding. But no, I think that, although it is kind of true, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Like a few years ago, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Me Too was the biggest issue in the world, and now like people,
it doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't matter at all.
It's
like,
inconvenient.
If people like, if like the if you're like, oh, we're not going to prosecute domestic violence because we want to get the numbers down. It's like, yeah, whatever. But
sounds good to me.
We could have a whole different conversation about how, the current version of the left doesn't really have a coherent and compelling message about public safety, but we'll save that for another time.
When we come back next month at the
yeah, exactly.
Lawless Brewing to discuss how do we get canceled for saying the wrong shit.
Yeah. But yeah, look.
Wait, I'm totally out to lunch on what
Sure.
we're talking about. So, like, what was the left upset at you with?
Sure. So what they were upset about was basically that I said in this article that fixation on indigeneity misses the point, right? That's like if you are, and it was actually in my mind at least, it was primarily an anti-Zionist point, but I also did put in some pot shots at, I think, the least helpful parts of the left, and those were enough to rile people up, that if you're saying, oh, what really matters is whose ancestors lived where, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago, I think that is a essentially reactionary worldview, right? And I
didn't go over real well.
Yeah, I mean, I keep threatening to write an article called why land acknowledgements are reactionary ethno-nationalist nonsense.
I'd love to read that.
That's Jacobin probably would not print that, but they had but I did get them to.
We got yelled at that.
Yeah,
we got yelled at.
Yeah, we did. But look, I don't think it should matter, right? I don't think it should be relevant in any way, shape, or form to what your standing is in the society that you live in, whether your ancestors lived there at a certain point of the past or not, right? That this is because once you go down that road, what are you doing? This is blood and soil nationalism. You're saying that certain ethnic groups have like an ancestral genetic bond with certain pieces of land. So, for example, in Naomi Klein's book Doppelganger, I think there's lots of good stuff. There's lots of stuff I agree with in that book, but there's a point in there where she's talking about the racial reckoning in Canada after the evidence of mass deaths at the residential schools, and she says settlers like me have to learn how to be better guests and neighbors on this land. I was like, okay, first of all, Naomi Klein's parents moved to Canada in like the 70s. They were
They settled Canada in the 70s.
Yeah, they were.
Get it right.
Yeah, they settled Canada in the
Patriarchal
70s when her
mindset.
dad was trying to get out of the drafter in Vietnam, right? So I don't understand this even on its own terms. But like also, look, she's a guest because her ancestors didn't live there in the 1600s, right? It's like, how does this work? I mean, if a family of Guatemalan immigrants who'd taken their Canadian citizenship exam last week, if somebody told them, oh, you're not really part of this society, you're just kind of a guest, Naomi Klein would call that person a fascist, and she would have a point, right? So what? Like if you're a white person, then like it's such a, like it makes no sense on its own terms. It's incredibly reactionary. By the way, I think it also makes her anti-Zionism incoherent because if you really go with this theory, then aren't Jews just guests everywhere in the diaspora, right? Like, why wouldn't you be a Zionist at that point, right? Like, if you don't think somebody's a fully paid up member of that society, just like that everybody is equally entitled to rights where they live just because they're a person, right? Then I don't understand why you're any sort of leftist or socialist or anything, right? I mean, that's the whole point, right? I mean, to my mind, right, like all this Israel-Palestine stuff we're talking about is essentially about, in Marxist terms, like I would use when indoctrinating my students, to hate Israel, that it's about what we call bourgeois democratic rights. In other words, just sort of basic rights to vote and, have a jury trial if you're accused of a crime, all that good stuff, right? Which is sort of the baseline. That's what like the French Revolution and the American Revolution, all those revolutions were about. And then some of us think, I told a couple of unkind jokes about DSA tonight, but but those are still my people, right? So some of us think that doesn't go nearly far enough, right? Every human being should also have a right to healthcare and housing and education and a voice and a democratic say in what happens in their workplace and all of this stuff. But like at the very least, the sort of standard liberal democratic rights, that's what we should all be able to get together on. It's like you shouldn't have to, the idea that like a DNA test would be relevant to this, I think is the most reactionary thing I can possibly imagine.
Yep.
And I think that people who have good intentions, they want to be against oppression as they see it in the world, but haven't thought about it very much, will say, oh, well, every single Israeli Jew is a colonizer, even if they like, their grandparents were born there in the 1930s and, they've never left Tel Aviv, you're still a colonizer. I know some people will tell me I just don't understand the, correct academic position on settler colonialism and, maybe. But I think what any normal person would hear when they hear that is, oh, you're saying this person doesn't like have a right to be here and have rights here like everybody else, that they're like an interloper. It's like, look, that's not the right view, right? This again.
I agree. And sorry to interrupt you, but
please.
I want to bring it back to Palestinians because the thing that I've had a very difficult time stomaching in this entire discourse is the way Palestinians are being portrayed as dangerous, angry, looking for revenge. Because my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was born in Haifa in 1937. She wasn't born in Haifa in 1937 by accident. She was part of the Armenian diaspora that was forced out of Armenia. And, you know, Armenians settled in various parts of the Middle East, some in Lebanon, you know, some in Iran. A lot of Armenians also settled in what is now considered Israel. But at the time, obviously, huge Palestinian population there. And, you know, as I got older and I was curious about my family's history, I would ask my mother. My grandmother died when I was 2 weeks old, so I never got to have these conversations with her. But I was very curious. How were Armenians treated by Palestinians in, at that time, you know, what wasn't considered Israel, because it was 1937. And my grandmother would have a lot of conversations with my mom about how Palestinians would welcome Armenians, take them in, treat them as if they are one of their own, which is kind of shocking to hear these days, not just because of, oh, it's Palestinians, but just the way that immigration is talked about. You know, like there's a lot of discourse that's framed in this us versus them mentality, but a lot of Armenian culture, a lot of the food that my mom makes is actually like Palestinian cuisine. And they welcomed the Armenian diaspora, made them feel safe, even though Armenians are Christians, you know, right? Like, oh, this is a religious war. Is it though? Because Palestinians, who for the most part tend to be Muslim, but there are Christian Palestinians as well, they didn't care. You have strangers, you have foreigners coming in, refugees coming in, my ancestors coming in, and they were welcome, they were given a safe haven, they were protected. And that's the kind of spirit that I want to support and amplify, because I know that exists within all of us. And I will not stand for anyone who tries to treat or put out this perception of Palestinians as like these animals who won't accept anyone who isn't exactly like them, because I know that that's not true. I know from my family's history that that's not true. They looked at Armenian refugees as human beings who should be protected. And it makes me sick to my stomach that my government right now is aiding and abetting their slaughter.
Yeah, and all you need to get to that conclusion is these are human beings.
These are human beings.
Can't treat any human beings that way. Full stop. End of discussion. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.